Beautiful. So welcome everybody to Start Strong 2021, a virtual summit for personal evolution. My name is Shae Sterrett, the creator and master of ceremonies. I'm so excited to welcome you to day 5, a workshop that we have starting with Rob Stewart of Inner Center. Rob is a certified consulting hypnosis and an evolutionary astrologer. He helps clients recognize and release the limiting thoughts and old patterns that have kept them stuck. In 2016, he formed his consulting business, Inner Center, and began assisting clients in connecting to their own deeper truth and understanding. Prior to his career as a hypnotist and astrologer, he worked in research. He worked as a research hydrologist in the academic field. So just want to remind everybody as we get started that this workshop is being recorded. So if you don't want to show up on YouTube or a website or social media, please go ahead and mute yourself and turn off your video. And then I'd like to introduce Rob Stewart, and I'll let you take it over from here.
All right, thanks, Shae. Let's see, I'm going to try to figure out how to share a screen.
Be able to now.
Okay, share screen. Huh, okay.
Got it?
Yeah, I practiced this, so I'm just getting it. Hang on a sec. All right, cool.
Good.
Be good to start at the.
And I'm going to go grab
Don't mind me. Okay. All right. So, well, yeah, thanks, Shae, and thanks for having me. So today we're talking about the inner child, and I like to call it the inner infant, just for reasons that it's the words for inner child have already been pretty well spoken for. So yeah, so I do evolutionary astrology and I'm a hypnotist. And I don't know if you guys know, but the energies this week could be the most heightened astrological energies of the whole year. And so I don't know if you guys are feeling that. I know I certainly am, but this week is really something, and it's likely the most heightened energies of the whole year. So I just want to share that. If anyone's been feeling, sudden energy shifts, this week has a lot of that. All right. So what I do, Shae already talked about this, but I'm a certified consulting hypnotist, evolutionary astrologer, and I did my hypnosis training through the National Guild of Hypnotists and a bunch of other trainings as well. And I've done coursework in astrology with the Multidimensional Evolutionary Astrology School with Tom Jacobs. And I'll be talking about a lot of Tom Jacobs material here, which has been really helpful in my helping clients. So I encourage people to check out his work. And then also coursework through the School of Evolutionary Astrology. And so, like Shae said, in 2016, I started Inner Center. And I really use astrology to help people validate their own experience in life and use hypnosis. I offer hypnosis to let go of old patterns and things like that. And so prior to this, I worked in academics for a long time, did this stuff on the side, but my heart just really pulled me into this other line of work, which I love. And so just note, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a licensed specialist. If you need medical or psychological help, please consult a licensed professional, because I'm just an astrologist and hypnotist. So astrology, in modern times, astrology has really fallen to the wayside. It's one of these things where we don't understand why it works, obviously. But astrology is really just an observable correlation between things that occur here in this earth and the planets in the sky. And there's this saying that, a lot of people, a lot of the skeptics haven't really looked deeply into astrology. And, but the people that have looked very deeply into astrology aren't very skeptical anymore. And, also in astrology, there's this long-standing debate about whether planets are forcing energies here on this planet to happen, if it's literally a mechanistic thing. But, that's one side of the debate. The other side of the debate is that astrology is sort of like a clock on a wall. And you can look at a clock and to see what time it is, and see what energies are occurring. And that's the way I see astrology. It's not a causal sort of thing. It's more of it's a clock on a wall, which can be really helpful. But astrology, obviously it's fallen out of favor today in modern culture, but it really flourished in times of heightened intellectual and cultural creativity. The Greek and Roman antiquity, the Italian Renaissance, all these times it was much more prominent. And, there's like a long list of Western philosophers that that have used astrology in a big way: Plato, Aristotle, Carl Jung, and so on. So today we're talking about the inner infant. And so, like I said, the inner child is a better known term, but I'm using the inner infant, which is something that Tom Jacobs also uses, which I find helpful to use a new term for this. But it's that part of ourself that's playful, that's innocent and joyful. It's that sort of gentle fragility we have in our own being, but it's also had a lot of hurt and misunderstanding in this difficult world. It's that part of ourselves that sort of build a barrier around because of these sensitivities. And, obviously our parents, well, hopefully our parents supported us in many ways, but they couldn't know all of our sensitivities. There's no way. And so there's parts of ourselves that it's as if the universe is asking us to support that part of ourselves, because no one else knows about it or knows how to work with it or what exactly is going on. So it's about becoming the source of love for oneself, really. And which is a challenge. I talk about it a lot. I'm still working on it, but it's part of the journey. And so, in astrology, there's a lot of ways to really reconnect with that part of oneself, of that inner infant. The moon is about emotional needs. Neptune is about sort of our sensitivity to the greater collective and things like that. And then the fifth house is about play and fun and creativity. Sort of the inner child is in the fifth house. But today I'm going to be talking about a different aspect that's really helpful in understanding that sensitivity that we have with the inner child. So we'll get to that. And it's the asteroid Chiron. And Chiron is known as the wounded healer in astrology. And that terminology works great. But there's a new perspective on Chiron that's taught by Tom Jacobs. And it's about beyond the wounded healer. And it's been really powerful for me, his perspective on Chiron. And I've really adopted it, and I'm sharing about it today because it's just a tremendously powerful tool. And so just about the mythology of Chiron, he was born of two Greek gods, and he was rejected at birth. He was born centaur, so he was part man, part horse. And his mom and dad were expecting a human child. And so he was rejected at birth. And he went to live with some teachers and sages, including Apollo. And he became a great teacher and a sage, and was really well known for being a very gentle being, and well respected, which wasn't common for centaurs at that time. Centaurs were sort of a bit troublemakers, but he was different than that. And so he gets wounded later in life accidentally by an arrow, and there's poison in the arrow, and he can't heal, but he cannot die because he's immortal. So he suffers tremendously and which is why it's called the wounded healer. But the thing is that the initial wound, and this is the thing that Tom Jacobs has brought a new perspective on, is that the initial wound was that rejection at birth. And then that arrow with the poison really manifested that later on in life. It became like a physical expression of that initial wound. But if you want to heal that wound, you go to the initial initiatizing event, sensitizing event, which was that rejection as a child. And so this is this new perspective on Chiron. Again, this is Tom Jacobs' work. It's an area of life that we feel worthy of rejection. Tom talks about it as like the opposite of lovable, worthy of rejection. And it's something that occurs shortly after birth, and where something happens where we perceive being not good enough. You know, it could have been something very subtle. It could have been the most innocent interpretation of a situation, but it happens and the child becomes thinking, oh, well, if I do this thing, then I will be rejected or something like that. And it's an area of life, and we'll see as we get to the astrology here, but we have a hypersensitivity to how people see us. It's a type of thing that, like, when I do this thing and I'm hypersensitive to their reactions, and I can sense the reactions, and then it's like a hypersensitivity. And it's also a place where we're very unique. We have those vulnerabilities. And so today we'll locate this in your chart and we'll describe what all this means. So working with the Chiron sensitivity, again, this is Tom's work here. It's been tremendously helpful for the work, my own work, the work I do with clients. It's about recognizing and accepting those sensitivities. You know, I am sensitive in this area, and that's okay. You know, I mean, you be the, you know, if this feels right for you, own it and accept it. If it doesn't feel right, then absolutely don't. But it's something about recognizing and accepting that sensitivity that we have, and letting that part of ourselves know that it's okay. We also make mountains out of molehills in this area. So for me, I have Chiron in the 10th house, which means it's my public life. It's like giving talks and this type of stuff. So I'm hypersensitive to how I'm seen in the public sphere, and I show up as unique in that way. But back in my old career, I'd give a talk to, 50 people or something. I'd focus on the 5 people that were rolling their eyes and, like, just not into it. And so we make mountains out of molehills wherever we do this, so know that that's really helpful, because one will sense a threat where there is no threat. It's just that because of that sensitivity we have, we're just really sensitive to the reactions. And then, the other thing is being the guide and the parent that you needed. And, I say this knowing that many of us have had wonderful parents, but again, they don't know all the sensitivities. They don't know all the in and outs, and we all show up as these unique individual beings. So you can make a list of what you wish your parents could have done to support you better, and be that for your inner child. So this is basically the approach for working with that inner infant. So let's see. All right, so what I'll do, I'll show you. I don't know if you guys have your birth chart available. If you don't, I'm just going to walk you right through it. And it's ideal if you have your birth time. If you don't have it, don't worry about it. It's good to use the exact time, though. So if you don't know the exact time, then maybe just leave the thing blank when we get to it. But so let's see. So if you just jump to astro.com, which is this wonderful website, it's a great website for both beginner astrologers and professional astrologers. It's just the best of the best website. And click on free horoscope there, which is the second tab to the left. So free horoscopes. And then I'm trying to go slow because I don't know if people need this or not, but so this brings this drop down menu, and then just click on natal chart ascendant over there. And I guess people can just watch this another time to get all this. So this will be, so this screen comes up and you just click on this here to go to data entry. And then there's some data privacy message here. And if it feels right, then you can click accept for the data privacy thing. And this is where you fill out all the information, you know, your name and the birth date. If you don't have the exact time, there's an unknown category. So if you don't know the exact time, just leave that as unknown. And then you can also search in this for your birth town. And it's got, you'll just type it in and you'll see a list. It's good to put city, comma, state abbreviations. That way it comes up easier. So, okay. All right, and then this chart pops out. And so what we're going to look at here is Chiron. Chiron is this glyph. It looks like a key. And so there's three bits of information that are important for this. The first is the house number. Again, the housing system would only show up if you put in the exact birth time. And so the housing system is this, these pie slices. And you want to look at the number of the house in which your Chiron falls into. And so in this case, it would be 10. This is the 10th house here. And then the second thing I want you to get, if you don't have the house number because you don't have the exact time, that's fine. Just skip it. The second thing is the zodiac sign. So can you guys see my mouse clicker? Yeah, okay. I don't know why you wouldn't. Of course you can. Let's see. So yeah, so look at the zodiac sign. So this is Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, Aries, Taurus. And if you missed what I said, just draw your little glyph and we'll come back to that next. And then the final thing to take a look at is the degree of Chiron. So the degree of Chiron is the big number just below it. So this one's at 19 degrees. Ignore the small number. Just take the big number. Don't round it. Don't worry about rounding. Don't do anything like that. Just take the big number. This is part of the degree theory by Nikola, I always say his name wrong, but Stoyanovich. And this is less important than the house and the signs, but this does provide, in my opinion, some really helpful information when looking at any of these things. So grab that degree. All right, so and just to recap, the location of Chiron in the chart indicates something we couldn't fully process as a child, a place where we're hypersensitive, particularly to the responses of other people. And it's a place where we feel worthy of rejection, as if we expect rejection in these areas of life, completely for no reason other than that's our belief and our experience and things like that. So the healthier response is recognizing this, accepting the sensitivity, understanding we make mountains out of molehills, and becoming the parent and the guide that the inner infant needs. And again, this is Tom Jacobs' stuff. So please check his website out. He's got some really awesome stuff. All right. Ooh. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just go through the 12 houses and their signs. And so each of these figures here will represent, a house, which is first house here for this one, or Aries, if your Chiron's in Aries, or the degrees 1, 13, or 25. And again, the order of importance here would be, in my opinion, the house and the sign clearly first, and then less important, but still helpful are the degrees. So just keep that in mind. All right, so the first house is about assertion and taking action, taking initiative, independence, steering the ship of life. standing out in the crowd. And so if you have Chiron in the first house, it would be hypersensitive to how people respond to your assertion. So you might be in a crowd and you're a group of friends, just say, hey, let's go do this thing. And everybody's kind of like, maybe one person just isn't focused on it, and you might be hypersensitive to that response that they have. The first house is about instinct and, making instinctive choices. And also how one uses their body. If someone does some expressions, maybe, just very reserved and sensitive about how to use the body in those ways. And also a lot of times people with first house Chiron sometimes had a difficult childbirth. It's as if their first borning into this world brought with it a difficult first impression. And so another thing with the first house or Aries or these degrees is that sometimes there's a sensitivity to the physical appearance. And it's something that's like oftentimes with the face, but it's something that someone is hypersensitive about, but others can't even notice. It's a type of thing of like, my ears are too big or something like that. People, and everybody just doesn't see it, but the person is hypersensitive to that, those things, as we all are hypersensitive to something. So an example of this as a child is like maybe an infant, and again, this is totally hypothetical, but the infant is walking towards the staircase and the parents are like, oh no, you like, come here. Like, and the infant was like, oh my gosh, I can't go out on my own. Or like when I go out on my own, they're not gonna like it. The infant sort of interpreted the thing as something was wrong with them. You know what I mean? So that's one way it could show up. All right, so Chiron in the second house, Taurus or those degrees. So the second house is about self-esteem, self-reliance, how you develop your skills, where you spend your time and money on. And when Chiron is the second house, it can be related to like, what I think is important doesn't matter, or what I value isn't important. And it can be hypersensitive to people, like maybe someone collects matchbox cars, and everyone else is like, what are you doing? And person's like, just will keep that hidden or something, just because they are sensitive to how people respond to what they value. Second house is also about living life on your own terms. So maybe if you spend your weekend doing something or other, maybe you keep that quiet because you don't want them to know what you're working on or whatever. You're just sensitive to their responses to it. Second house is also developing certain skills. So maybe a child, maybe everyone's going to soccer practice as a child, but the person with the second house Chiron wants to take fencing or something, something unique. They show up as unique in that way. And so everyone else is like, well, why do you want to do fencing? And like, that's what I like. And, but there's this inner sensitivity to spending energy the way you want. Also how you make money. Like maybe you're an online professional poker player, but you don't want people to know, it's just, you make money in a unique way. Someone that has a difficulty in naming their price for their work could be very sensitive. If they have a second house Chiron, they might say, well, oh, can I charge you $50 for this? They might be very just sensitive as to how much they value their own work and how much they can value their own work. And one way of thinking about this with the infant is like maybe an infant, because what they value is different than others, or that's their perception, is maybe the infant's grabbing for the remote control, and the father or mother is like, no, that's not for you. And they're like, oh gosh, whenever I reach out for what matters to me, it's wrong. Or they interpret, because the brain's still forming, they interpret it as if they made some sort of transgression and don't want to do that again, you know, worthy of rejection in that area. So the third house, and as you see, there's some supportive affirmations with this, and you know, play around with what works for you. So the third house is about learning, it's about education, communication, perception. And so with the third house Chiron, how you learn or how you think, might be a uniqueness there. You know, maybe it's something that, how you process information. You know, a third house Chiron, the person's not going to want to raise their hand in class and share what they have to say. You know, there might be this thing of saying like, oh, I can't think what I want to think, or I can't say what I want to say. I can't, there's a sensitivity there. They show up as unique in those ways. And so there might be a hesitancy to ask questions or even to reach out. The third house is about reaching out into the surrounding environment. It's also the house of siblings, so it can be sensitive to how the siblings, interactions with siblings are. And I know someone that has a third house Chiron that was in an incubator just after birth. And of course, in an incubator, the third house is about reaching out. And of course, in an incubator, you can't interact with the immediate environment there. So that could be one way of in which this Chiron in the third house was experienced as an infant. Let's see. Also, the topics that someone really enjoys, if they have a third house Chiron, they might think like, oh gosh, if I share that I love, you know, this topic, you know, maybe it's like Dungeons and Dragons or something, and they're like, you know, I just really like this thing, but they'd be hypersensitive to their own uniqueness in whatever area that is, some different topics and things like that. Okay. So Chiron in the fourth house or Cancer, or those degrees. The fourth house is about home, family, belonging. Belonging's a big one. Private life, safety and security, mom or dad. You know, with a fourth house Chiron, there's something that like, my needs don't matter or something. Whenever I have needs, that my needs aren't good enough to be met or something like that. There's some, you know, it's difficult for the Chiron in the fourth house to honor their own needs because there's this sensitivity and this woundedness that was there that happened maybe as a child. Maybe the mom or dad, maybe the infant was crying and the mom and dad put the infant down just 30 seconds before the infant was ready for that. And but you know, interpret it as, oh, like this doesn't matter to them or something like that, you know. A lot of things in the fourth house in astrology are handed down generationally. So whatever you have in the fourth house can speak to energies that existed before you were born, according to the astrology. You know, in other words, like an elephant in the room before you even showed up in life. You know, you're just born into this environment of this family that has this heritage, and then it's part of it's part of the experience. And so with the fourth house Chiron, there might be some really emotional, wounded people in the family, and it's something that's passed down. Also, like difficulty in expressing how you feel and what you need. You know, it says if I voice my feelings, then I'll be rejected. Or if I say what I need, they're going to say no, and it won't be good. These are the types of energies that can show up for the fourth house Chiron. All right, fifth house. So fifth house Leo are those degrees. And again, these degrees, this is part of degree theory, which I find absolutely fascinating. And so just things to keep in mind as we go through here. The fifth house is about creative expression. It's about being on center stage, standing up for your beliefs. It's about having an opinion and owning that opinion. It's like, you know, being there, following your heart's desires, even just having fun, flirting, joking around. That's all fifth house stuff. And so with a fifth house Chiron, the person likely is like, oh, if I really express myself, it's not going to be received, they're going to be hypersensitive. And even if maybe if you're joking around and you're just sort of tuning into their response, and that's the place of that sensitivity. And maybe as an infant, there wasn't the infant was sort of doing a performance, but it didn't receive the applause that the infant wanted, or something. That felt rejected when it was being totally expressive and things like that. So so a fifth house Chiron person won't want to be egotistical or loud. They won't want to take up space out of fear of because of that sensitivity. So let's see, I'm just trying to manage time with these different houses and things. It's always kind of a tricky, tricky thing. Let's see. Yeah. Also about flirting, maybe someone's just having fun flirting, but with a fifth house Chiron, they might be, the thing is you'd be sensitive to how people respond to your own doings with that house, but also sensitive to how others are, maybe someone's flirting towards the person with the fifth house Chiron, and they just might be like, oh, I don't know how to respond to this type of energy. It can work both ways like that. All right, Chiron in the sixth house, or Virgo. So this is the house of being of service. It's like daily routine, improving things, perfecting things, analyzing, discerning. Healing work is a big part of the sixth house. And so, it's about project management. So maybe someone at work is feeling highly sensitive to how they are just going about the tasks. Organizational skills, maybe they're afraid to use their own type of system for organization or something out of fear it might, it may not work out, or it may be criticized, or they feel worthy of rejection. It's the day-to-day routine stuff. So maybe just this person has a routine, but is just very cautious about how they share it or things like that because of this inner infant wounding that occurred. And the sixth house with Virgo, perfectionism is a big thing with Virgo. And so, maybe if someone's saying, I'm just not perfect enough, or I need to, if I'm not perfect, then I'm worthy of rejection. That's another way it could show up. Sixth house is about the body. So maybe someone is into the alternative treatments or alternative approach for healing, but they may not share what they're doing with people, or they might, there's going to be a hypersensitivity to how people respond to you when you're talking about doing your whatever it is approach to healing in the sixth house with a sixth house Chiron. And so, example, maybe the infant was trying to put the blocks, I don't know, this is probably a lousy example, but those toys with the blocks, putting the blocks in through the right slot, and they're taking their time doing the way that they, their own unique way of doing that task, but maybe it was corrected or something by the parents or something like that. So then they thought, oh, whenever I try to organize things or do it the way that I like to do it, and also improving things. Someone with a sixth house or a Virgo Chiron might look to improve things in a really different type of way. And the thing is with Chiron, wherever it shows up in the chart, we are unique in that area, but there's such gifts with that uniqueness. It's a type of thing that by honoring that inner child and providing that nurturing and that love for oneself, that uniqueness can surface, and it's such a contribution to society. So wherever this sensitivity is, there's tremendous gifts in that area of life, in addition to this, the challenges of being sensitive. Ooh. Okay, seventh house or Libra. Seventh house is personal relationships. It's being there for others. It's quality, justice, balance, cooperation, partnerships. And so seventh house, basically in astrology, whatever's in the seventh house is something that we sort of have divorced from our own self, and it's what we attract with other people. So it's often considered the relationship house. Whatever's there, you're sort of attracted to those types of people and their energies that they represent. It's amazing how all this works. But the seventh house is something that is in our being, but we've sort of distanced ourselves from it, so that the way that the universe is helping us work with that energy is by attracting other people with those energies, so that we can learn through that manner. And so with the seventh house Chiron, there's one way it can show up is that you might attract a lot of wounded people, a lot of emotionally wounded people in ways, I say in a wonderful way, we're all emotionally wounded people, but particularly with some of the seventh house Chiron, there might be attracting those archetypes of sensitivity so that they can work with it in that manner, because there's something it does exist within their own self, but it's something that, because there's been some type of divorcing and mentally or in some way that they're like, oh, that's not me, it's out there. But through out there, that's one way of working with it. Or you can work with it with yourself. But in the seventh house, it's about connection. It's about friendship and partnership. So even just in friendships, there's going to be this sensitivity when relating to people. And just this sensitivity of like, oh, I'm being with a friend, and oh, am I doing the friend thing right? Or this sort of hyper vigilance over this friendship, and am I showing up in the right way? That type of thing. And as a child, there, as an infant, maybe something happened where the child thought like, hey, I was trying to connect with you, mommy or daddy, or whomever primary caregiver was, and that person wasn't able to fully be there in the way that the child wanted in that moment. So that's the type of thing. It's about connection with others with the seventh house, Libra, or those degrees. So yeah, feeling worthy of rejection in relationship can be a big part of a seventh house Chiron. These things can show up in a lot of different ways, and these are just examples. There's no hard rule or like, this is the way it shows up. These are ways that it can. Okay. So eighth house or Scorpio. So the seventh house is about interpersonal relationships. You meet someone, you're having a friendship or whatever it is, or just colleagues, work colleagues, whatever. Two people interacting at seventh house. Eighth house is when you know that person much more. There's, marriage or, business partnerships, something where there's shared resources. That's the eighth house in astrology. And so when there's Chiron in the eighth house, there's sensitivities to vulnerability and intimacy, trust. Power dynamics is a big thing for the eighth house. And another thing is sensitivity to other people's shadows. So it's a type of thing that people with eighth house Chirons are hypersensitive to other people's junk, so to speak, because maybe something, maybe daddy was having a rough day at work, and the infant was saying, oh, what's going on, daddy, or whatever, and I was like, oh, it's fine, but the child knew there was something going on and can really sense beneath the surface type of thing. And so with eighth house Chiron, you can really tune in to other people's junk. And because of the sensitivity to being vulnerable, a lot of eighth house Chiron, it's going to be, they'll think maybe like, if I do connect in that deep way, they're going to reject me. So maybe the infant was really just going deep and wanting to connect in this deep way of, emotionally, whatever, and the person wasn't there, and the infant interpreted it as, I'm worthy of rejection when I try to be vulnerable and to go deeply there with them. And it's, so with Chiron in the eighth house, oftentimes what can be experienced is like this difficulty to trust people, because of picking up on on these other energies there. And then it can be difficult working with like lies and cheating and stealing with 8th house Chiron. There's a hypersensitive to those things, maybe hypersensitive to calling them out on those things. Like, oh, you lied here. They might not want to call people out on those things because they might feel, if they do, feel worthy of rejection. All right, let's see. Right, so it can be slow to trust with the 8th house, with an 8th house Chiron. And all these things are totally understandable. We all have Chiron somewhere. So there's no, we all are hypersensitive in some area of life. And it's pretty remarkable how this all works. All right, so the 9th house is the lens in that we see the world. Oftentimes people talk about belief, but belief comes in many forms. It's really the worldview, the perspective of the world, one's own philosophy. It can be religion, higher education, whatever it is. And so with a 9th house Chiron, you might be sensitive to other people questioning your beliefs, or maybe sensitive to challenging other people's beliefs. Maybe the 9th house Chiron person aligns with a certain religion or a certain philosophy that other people might not understand, and they get maybe at times strange looks from people or whatever it is. But this is just that inner infant to provide that support for that inner infant. Maybe it's a type of thing that the inner infant won't feels that no one will understand my view. That's one way it can show up, where there's just this, won't feel they understand, that type of thing. So let's see. Also travels with 9th house, traveling over large bodies of water. So maybe someone is, they want to go somewhere that they really enjoy, or like go on certain adventures, but might be afraid of going to that place because of what person might say. Also intuition, maybe a wounding to trusting one's own intuition. And again, we show up as tremendously unique wherever these things are. So by supporting that inner child, there's a gift you are to bring to the world wherever Chiron is in your chart. Okay, so Chiron in the 10th house is where my Chiron is. It's when you wear your woundedness on your sleeve. That's the thing with the 10th house. It's out in the open. It's what people can see. It's not the full being of who you are. It's just what's seen in public at times. So public life, career, achievement, recognition for work, that type of thing. So, the thing with the 10th house Chiron, and my own experience, I was trying to do the regular sort of job, which I did for a long time. But there's sort of this sensitivity to the rat race, or the typical reasons for doing things a certain way. So it shows up with some uniqueness with what they want to do for work. And, oftentimes, there's a sensitivity. It's as if that wasn't fully recognized, or wasn't fully, maybe felt like if I show up the way that I want to show up in the public, then it won't be received, I'll be rejected, things like that. So oftentimes there could be, maybe a sensitivity with father. 10th house is related to father. So it could be this, that pat in the back or whatever it was as a child. And, maybe as a child, the child said something like, I want to be a circus clown or something. And, the parents were like, no, you don't, or whatever it was. And like, oh gosh, if I say I want to be a circus clown, it's not going to go well. So, so yeah, those are big things with the 10th house. Again, it's what's worn on the sleeve. It's sort of what people see. from a distance, um, giving a talk, or, we know a lot of people as 10th house figures. There are people in in politics or whatever it is. We know them as their public image, but we don't know their inner being. That's a 10th house thing, is the public image. So there's a sensitivity to being seen in those ways. All right, 11th house. So the 11th house is about having a vision for the future and working towards that vision. It's having a goal. It's about groups. Usually, you combine with people that are like-minded to join groups to achieve something in common. It's about finding your tribe and social movements. Politics falls under 11th house categories. And so there could be sensitivity to groups. Maybe they're a part of a group, but they feel like they're not really fully belonging to that group. Or, like, oh, if I show that I'm different than other people, I'll be rejected. A lot of times at the 11th house Chiron, someone is sort of marching to the beat of their own drummer, but they may not want to be seen as a loner or something like that. Like, a sensitivity to be seen as different might be very difficult for the 11th house Chiron person, like not wanting to be seen as a loner. 11th house Chiron, you might have a very unique view for the future, and just be highly sensitive to sharing that. And as an infant or whatever, it might have shown up as something happened where the child didn't feel part of the group, or just felt like, the group's going this way and I want to go check out that flower or something, but I can't. If I show that I want to check that flower out, it's not gonna, they're not gonna like that, or these types of internal beliefs and perceptions that are made at a young age. All right, let's see. So, okay, so the 12th house, the first 11 houses are about life here on Earth. And the 12th house is really the unseen. It's beyond. It's the connection to the cosmos, sort of the metaphysical areas of life that are behind the veil type of thing. So it's our connection to the cosmos, connection to the greater collective, mysticism, meditation. It's about surrendering in the 12th house. And so if someone has a Chiron in the 12th house, there might be this sensitivity, like, if I let go, I can't just let go right now because, something happened as a child or something like that. That's one way it could show up. But it's also about tuning in to the collective energies and, all the suffering that's in this world. Someone might be very sensitive to the collective consciousness, or the hurts or the wounds that are occurring in this world. And they might think, obviously be highly sensitive to it, but not knowing how to work with that. Someone with a 12th house suffering, is like 12th house Chiron, they might see suffering and then not know how to work with it. There's this, with a 12th house, it's like your pain is my pain. And if someone shows with a 12th house Chiron, they sense this pain over there, they might want to help, but they don't know how to, or maybe they close themselves down from helping. But there's this sort of sensitivity to to the wounding of collective energy type of thing. There's also, with the 12th house, because it's connected with sort of the cosmos and things like that, maybe like a child used to see angels or something like that, and then later in life that child doesn't see angels, or whatever it is, imaginary friend or whatever. And so they might have interpreted that like, oh, I'm, what did I do to not see my invisible friend anymore, or whatever it is. And they might feel this wounding of this, my connection to the cosmos is severed, or something like that. This is another way it could show up, where there's this hypersensitivity to disconnected from the collective, and working, finding ways of supporting that inner child with that is really helpful. And it's also, the 12th house is also the subconscious, so someone might be very sensitive, but they don't know what it is that's sensitive about. But again, it's about the collective consciousness. It's about sort of the vibes in the world that can be very sensitive to. So, all right. So, I mean, that's all I had to share. The bottom line is, again, this is Tom Jacobs' approach, and it's been really helpful for me. And it's something that I incorporate in the readings I do with people. I do a 6-part evolutionary astrology reading, and Chiron is one part, and we look at the aspects Chiron makes and all these different things between different planets. But that's just one part of the 6 that we talk about. And the rest is about the evolutionary astrology, which is about one's journey through, if you believe in multiple lives, it speaks to the multi-life journey that we're on. And it's about making free choices and empowered choices. There's nothing set in stone. There's no, astrology, I think, is misperceived by many people. It's really about making empowered choices in our life. And it's been really helpful for me. And I love working with people with that. So yeah, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to check it out. And I encourage people to look at Tom Jacobs' site, tdjacobs.com. Some really good stuff there.
Yeah, and Rob, I did put your website in the Facebook group. I also put Tom's website in the Facebook group.
Okay.
And I just want to share one of the aspects that I love about this presentation. Not that we need a reason to be gentle with ourselves, but we've been talking a lot about self-compassion throughout this summit, and we are kind of born into these signs and symbols and natures, and it kind of validates the fact that we need to be gentle with ourselves, because we do have these natural instincts for whatever reason, and astrology can explain some of them. But that self-compassion and being gentle with yourself is so important, because I think it allows you to move through some of the things that do feel like more of a struggle, and evolve on a deeper level.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's something I talk about a lot, the inner child, infant stuff, and something I the more that I practice, I really benefit from. And it's just a matter of making that practice, which can be a challenge. But it's there's no doubt that it's a very fruitful place to put one's energy. So
yeah, absolutely. Good. Any questions from our little community here on Zoom? And feel free to put them in chat or put them on Facebook. And
I'll just make an observation. Astrology reading is fascinating to me. And early on in my metaphysical journey, I had read a book that was amazing. And one of the things she talks about is reincarnation and how it's affected by astrology. And that her explanation was that at the point that you leave this earth, you leave at a certain energy level because of the astrological configuration, and you don't come back until that is repeated. You come back in the astrological sign that you left this earth on, which I thought was rather fascinating.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I wouldn't know for sure with any of that stuff. I mean, but it is amazing the how there's relevance of these planets, and it's not like it's causing things. Like I said, but there certainly are correlations, and it really, in my experience, has really helped validate my own experience here in life. And but yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, I belong to a group of folks on Facebook that are very in tune with this stuff, and I'll put out, why am I feeling so distracted and fragmented? Well, because here's what's going on with the stars. I'm like, oh, okay. It's just crazy because we discount that pull, but yet we don't discount that the moon can actually move the ocean.
Yeah.
Right.
And the human body is made up of what, 85% water?
Right, right. And the moon is affecting that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That, the word lunatic comes from lunar, lunar. There's, you talk to nurses or doctors, they say the full moon is always the most accident prone time of the month. And so it's pretty amazing. It's a qualitative approach to describing energies with astrology.
With a little bit more predictability.
Right.
You can kind of keep track of it, which is nice, I think.
Yeah.
Like I like being able to look on my calendar, the transit chart entries that I've put in there throughout the year and be like, okay, Mars and Saturn and retrogrades, and it's
Right.
nice to have that little bit of an insight.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to me.
Especially again, going back to the themes that we've kind of talked about is stress reduction. What are the things you can control? What can't you control? What are the ways that you can find the most ease in your life? And that is certainly one of them.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, this has been amazing. And like you said, the Chiron in your chart is one of so many different aspects of the astrology chart. So I definitely encourage people to check out Ralph's website and the work that he's doing. And it's so much more than just pulling up your chart on a free website. Really diving deep in there can be really valuable in personal growth and transformation. And so thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Honor you and your work and your wisdom and for sharing it with us. It was so wonderful.